Losing your first 5 kilos of body weight can seem daunting, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose. Now, there is a lot of information out there, some better than others. Some will have you believe that you have to do endless hours of cardio, and you have to do these ridiculous high intensity interval training exercises if you want to lose weight. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. As someone who has lost over 5 kilos in the last couple of months, I'm going to share with you my framework for losing weight and the steps that I've taken and how you can apply these to yourself. Let me first start by explaining how fat loss works. Fat loss is simple and it comes down to calories in versus calories out. Now let's take this one step back. What is a calorie? A calorie is a unit of measure. Much like a centimeter or an inch to measure distance, a calorie is a unit of energy. Now when it comes to gaining weight or losing weight, you need to have an energy imbalance. In other words, if you want to gain weight, you need to be consuming more energy than you're burning throughout the day. And if you want to lose weight, you need to be consuming less energy than you're burning throughout the day. And if you want to maintain your weight, then you should be aiming to consume about as much energy as you're burning throughout the day. So there are two parts to this equation that you need to be aware of that you can control. So in order to lose weight, and specifically lose fat, you need to do a few things. The first is to be in a caloric deficit. You need to make sure you're not consuming any more calories than you're burning throughout the day. The second thing you want to do is preserve your muscle, because if you're only doing that, you will not only lose fat, but you will lose muscle, and that's something that you absolutely want to avoid. So in order to preserve your muscle, you have to do two things. The first is to lift weights or do some form of resistance exercise. It's a signal to your body to keep the muscle. The second thing you need to do is make sure you eat an adequate amount of protein, enough so that your body can keep the muscle. The protein is the feeding blocks, but doing the exercises is what tells your body to preserve the muscle in the first place. So you need to do both. You do all of these three things and you will lose fat. So now we understand that fat loss comes down to having a calorie deficit. In other words, consuming less calories than you're burning. We first need to understand how many calories we're burning, which is a calories out part of the calories in versus calories out equation. Now to work out how many calories you're burning throughout the day, go onto Google and type in calorie calculator. Now for me, the first result I get is calculator.net. I will be using that as an example. So when you go onto the website, this is what you will see. And for me, I'm using metric units. So as you can see, I've entered my data, age 34, height 187 centimeters, and current weight 116 kilos. Now what I also like to do is underestimate my activity level. So for me, I will choose light, which is exercising 1 to 3 times per week, even though I technically exercise a little bit more than that. However, I want to be sure that I am in enough of a calorie deficit to see the rate of weight loss that I want. Also, it gives me a bit more leeway when it comes to the weekend so I can enjoy food a little bit more. And you'll see what I mean soon. So I'm going to click calculate. I'm going to ignore the settings and click calculate. And then it takes me to this next page. And as you can see, there's only one number that I'm interested in here, which for me is the maintain weight, which is 2,975 calories per day. That means based on my body and my energy levels, if I want to maintain my weight, then I should aim to eat just under 3,000 calories per day. Now, if I want to see fat loss, well, you have to understand you've got to be in a deficit. And secondly, depending on the calorie deficit that you go for, you will see a different rate of fat loss. So if I were to aim to eat 1,975 calories a day, which is 1,000 less than my maintenance calories, over the course of 7 days, I should lose around a kilo of my weight. So if you're on the heavier side, you can of course go for a deeper calorie deficit of around 1,000 calories. If you're lighter and you only want to lose maybe 4 or 5 kilos, then going for a 500 calorie deficit might be enough and more sustainable for you. Now also keep in mind, you don't have to be in a caloric deficit every single day of the week. Think of it as an average or over the course of 7 days. If you manage to get yourself into a deficit for most of the week, and you end up with a week in a deficit of around 3,500 calories, even if you've had a surplus or you've eaten at your maintenance for 2 days of the week, you're still going to lose weight. So in other words, if I spend 5 days eating around 2,000 calories, which will put me in a 1,000 calorie deficit, and for Saturday and Sunday, I eat at my maintenance, so around 3,000 calories, I'm still in a deficit of 5,000 calories for that week, which will give me at least half a kilo to 3/4 of a kilo of fat loss. All right, now that we understand our maintenance calories, and you may by now have worked out how many calories you're aiming for, we then need to come up with a plan to hit those calories every day. Now, remember what I said earlier, you also need to be lifting weights, but also you want to make sure you're eating an adequate amount of protein. So now let's go onto the food section, which is the calories in section. I'm going to be targeting about 2,000 calories or just under per day. That means on those days, I should be having a 1,000 calorie deficit. Now, the next thing I want to do is figure out how much protein I should be eating. And if you watch people online, you will get a varied number. Studies show that as long as you're eating at least 1.2 kilos of protein per day, you're going to get benefits from lifting weights. You're going to see those benefits more versus someone who is eating 0.8 grams per kilo of protein per day. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, the RDA for protein intake is 0.8 grams per kilo of your body weight. In other words, if you weigh 80 kilos, then multiplying that by 0.8 gives you 64 grams of protein per day as your target. But if you're lifting weights, then you want to be consuming at least 1.2 grams per kilo of body weight per day. So 80 times 1.2 is 96, and that would be your target protein intake for the day. For me, I have a target weight of 90 kilos, so I can multiply 90 by 1.2, which is 108 grams of protein. That's my minimum protein target. As long as I'm hitting that, I'm happy. And I know a lot of people out there will tell you that you should be multiplying your body weight in kilos by 2 and aiming for that. But let me tell you, when you're trying to go into a calorie deficit, that is limiting the number of calories that you're eating per day, and you've got this very high protein goal, you're going to be severely restricting the foods that you can eat. And from my personal experience, it's not sustainable. It might not be optimal, but I'd rather be sustainable than optimal and actually see results. Now, in order to achieve your calorie and protein goal, you can use any method you want. You can eat once a day, although I wouldn't recommend that. You can eat 2 or 3 or 4 times a day. And you can eat what you want as long as it fits into your calorie and your protein targets. So the best way to do that is to use an app. I personally use MyFitnessPal, and it allows me to log all the foods that I eat. And at the end of the day, it will give me how much protein I've consumed. That's important because it also means I can swap out foods when I want to in order for me to hit my goals. So let me give you an example of exactly what I eat. Now, I'm not saying this is what you should do because I do not recommend it, but it works for me. Now, bear in mind, I have a very busy full-time job. I don't really cook. And so what I'm about to show you works for me. I also have a huge sweet tooth. I love chocolate, which is why you will see some of the foods in here that I've included. It doesn't mean it's the healthiest, but it's allowing me to sustain this way of eating for long enough that I am seeing progress in my weight loss journey. Remember, it's always about progress over perfection. So this is my typical day of eating, especially during the weekdays. I generally do intermittent fasting. You don't have to do that. It just is a way for me to reduce my calories. It's as simple as that. So my lunch will normally be like a frozen meal from Aldi. So in this case, it's a chicken tikka masala. The next thing I will have is a Huel chocolate shake. It's a meal replacement shake. It gets me my fiber. And as I said, I love chocolate, which is why I include it. It helps hit that spot. And the combination of these two for me just keeps me feeling full for the next several hours. We then move on to dinner. And with dinner, I will have a few different things. I'll have a whole apple. I'll have a mixed leaf salad. I will have a 3-egg omelette with vegetables. I will also typically have a smoothie, like a banana and apple smoothie. And finally, a chocolate pudding with about 20 grams of protein in it. This gives me a total of around 1,941 calories and gets me 109 grams of protein for the day, which is me hitting my minimum protein target. It gives me enough variety in my foods that allows me to be sustainable with this way of eating. Even though it's only temporary, I'm able to sustain it for long enough that I have been and I will continue to see results. I also want to mention that I eat this way generally Monday to Fridays. And when it comes to Saturdays and Sundays, I'm much more flexible with what I eat. It allows me to go out and have a social life and not worry too much about the calories. I'm still going to keep in the back of my mind that I want to control my calories to an extent. Ideally, I don't want to have more than 3,000 calories on a Saturday and Sunday. If I do, it's not the end of the world, but I'll try my best to not go over. And finally, what ties this all together is my training routine. And this is something that you will absolutely want to incorporate. So come up with a plan that works for you, and remember, doing something is better than doing nothing. Even if you only have half an hour per day, use it. It's better than not doing anything at all. So this is what I personally do. Twice a week, I will work out, I will lift weights. Over those 2 days, I hit my full body. The other 4 days or 5 days per week, I will walk. It is a way for me to get my steps in and to increase my calorie expenditure. If I had a busier job where I was walking around most of the day, such as working in retail, then I may not bother with that, because the combination of doing that throughout the day and having a more restricted diet most days of the week will be enough to put me in a deficit. But the most important thing you need to do is to lift weights at least twice a week. So this is the framework that I've been using to lose weight. It works. You've got to be in a caloric deficit, you've got to lift weights at least once or twice a week, and you've got to consume at least enough protein. The way I look at it is you want to be sustainable rather than optimal. You will get results if you're sustainable. If you try to be optimal, you'll probably burn out. So aim for sustainability every time. If you like the video, please give a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.